Bonafide Reformer, Episode 6. The Fragility of Strong Majorities. Keir Starmer's Labour Party, fresh from its so-called Loveless landslide, may sit comfortably with a strong parliamentary majority, but this does not equate to stability or control. History is littered with examples of governments that won big majorities, only to crumble under internal division and poor leadership. Lord North's government, which led Britain through the loss of the American colonies, is a fitting example. Despite enjoying royal favour and a strong majority, North's administration collapsed under the weight of policy failures, external conflicts, and an inability to manage internal dissent. Starmer's government may not be fighting wars in distant lands yet, but its internal policy crises and factional disputes are shaping up to be just as fatal. Lord North's government, with the support of King George III, commanded Parliament with confidence in the 1770s, but it wasn't long before his administration began to unravel, particularly as military defeat in America and internal divisions over policy choices undermined his authority. Despite holding the numbers, North's inability to manage his party's infighting and the mounting public discontent led to the collapse of his government. In 2024, Keir Starmer faces a similar challenge. While Labour's victory was decisive in terms of seats, it was hardly a victory of enthusiasm. The so-called Loveless landslide was driven more by anti-Tory sentiment than by fervour for Labour's policy offerings. Underneath the surface of this numerical triumph, Starmer's government is battling a series of internal disillusionments that threaten his leadership in much the same way Lord North's policy disasters did. For Lord North, the American Revolutionary War was the defining failure that undermined his grip on power. For Starmer, the conflicts are internal, but no less damaging. The revelation of an alleged $22 billion black hole in public finances has led to fiscal policies that have divided the party. Starmer's commitment to fiscal responsibility is seen by many on the left wing of his party as a betrayal of the bold reforms promised during his leadership bid. Adding to these woes are Starmer's authoritarian tendencies. His government's retention of the public order laws inherited from the Conservatives has alienated Labour's traditional base. These laws, which restrict peaceful protests and expand police powers, are deeply unpopular among the party's progressive factions, further straining the already fragile coalition that brought Labour to power. Starmer's troubles were brought into sharp relief almost immediately when 7 Labour MPs were stripped of the whip for defying the government over the controversial two-child benefit cap. This policy, introduced by the Conservatives and left untouched by Starmer, limits child benefits to the first 2 children in a family. MPs like John McDonnell and Rebecca Long-Bailey rebelled against Starmer's decision to keep the cap, arguing that lifting it would have helped lift 330,000 children out of poverty. Their rebellion and subsequent suspension has only deepened the divide between Labour's centrist leadership and its left wing. To further complicate matters, Starmer's government has also axed winter fuel payments for pensioners, a move that has sparked anger even among some of Labour's more moderate supporters. This decision, seen as necessary for managing the public finances, has compounded the sense that Starmer's government is willing to make unpopular decisions to appease fiscal hawks at the expense of vulnerable constituents. If Lord North's undoing was his military defeat in America, Starmer's could well come from his authoritarian instincts. Labour's retention and expansion of policing powers has led to accusations that he's governing through control rather than consensus. The decision to retain laws restricting the right to protest is seen by many as an abandonment of the civil liberties Labour once championed. As the immigration debate rages on and the handling of the summer riots exposes Labour's reluctance to engage with societal tensions, Starmer's policies increasingly appear out of touch with the very people who voted him in. Like North's government, Starmer's administration is battling internal dissent. North's inability to manage the Whigs contributed to his downfall, and Starmer's left flank could prove similarly destructive. The left wing of Labour, disillusioned by Starmer's centrist economic policies and compromises on climate commitments, feels increasingly alienated. The rebellion over the two-child benefit cap and frustration over fiscal austerity measures have only added fuel to the fire. Starmer's decision to distance himself from Jeremy Corbyn's socialist legacy has left many on the left feeling that Labour, under his leadership, is barely distinguishable from the Conservatives. His efforts to appear more fiscally responsible and tough on law and order have created a schism within the party that's not easily mended. So can history repeat itself? Absolutely. The lesson from Lord North's collapse is that a large majority is no guarantee of stability. Despite his electoral victory, Starmer's government is increasingly exposed to internal rebellion, policy failures and public disillusionment. The two-child benefit cap rebellion, the axing of winter fuel payments and the shift towards more authoritarian policies are all points of contention that threaten to undermine Starmer's leadership. Like Lord North, who watched his once commanding position fall apart in the face of policy mismanagement and internal dissent, Starmer is now grappling with similar forces. Without addressing these divisions and regaining the trust of his disillusioned MPs and supporters, Starmer's majority may prove just as illusory as North's. If history is anything to go by, it won't be long before the cracks in Starmer's government become too deep to repair. Thank you for listening to this Bonafide Reformer podcast. This article was first published on X on the 24th of October 2024 at Noel Reforms.